Let's talk about character art. All things character art, whether you're using it for a book or for a different project like merch or your patrons or social media. There's tons of cool ways you can use character art. It's a really exciting part of being an author, but there's a lot of questions surrounding it. In fact, I asked you guys over on YouTube, I said, help me out. I want to do a video on character art and share my experiences from the multiple times I've worked with people, both for book covers and just for regular character art. There were so many questions. I tried to lump them into 10 categories. So we're going to talk about ROI, which stands for return on investment, whether or not it's even a good idea. We're going to talk about where to find them, hiring them, how to work with them, aka the commission process, inspiration / what you provide, pricing, how long it takes / how many drafts do they typically do, the cover size if you're doing covers specifically, and other book related specific things you should know. Your rights to use that character art, specifically if it's commercial usage or not. And we also need to talk about AI. A couple of you had questions about that, and I think it's worth talking about, even though I think it's still really brand new, but I want to include it so that we can talk about it at least in the comments. All right, I tried to organize the questions so that they kind of went along with the process in order of how you might be approaching it, how you might be thinking about it. So the first question about ROI, aka return on investment, is that question of, is this even the right timing for me? Should I even be doing this? Leanne asked, I often struggle with knowing if it's a smart ROI decision or if the money would not be worth investing. How do you decide if it's time to do character art or if it's something you should hold off on for now? This is such a smart question. First of all, you are really ahead of the game, and that's so smart of you to consider that, because yeah, sometimes it's not worth it. And I'm just gonna be super real with you. I know there's a lot of authors who are like, but I want it. That's a different conversation. If you just want it, you're like, I'm willing to spend the money, fine, then this question's not for you. But if you're like, if I spend XYZ amount of dollars, especially if it's a more expensive amount, how do I know if it's a smart decision and I'll make my money back? So I will give you an example. I reorganized this so that I could have my whole book stack, and it's super buried, but this Stolen Kingdom collector's edition, I used that to help me figure out if it would be smart to do another collector's edition but with character art, and if I can make my money back. First of all, pricing does come into play, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But once I got the price from my character artist, I was like, okay, how many books do I need to sell to effectively make my money back? And to do that, you can actually use, I think there's pricing calculators. Just Google Ingram Spark pricing calculator or Kindle Direct Publishing pricing calculator, and you can plug in some details about what you expect your book to be. Like, for example, this is 6x9, almost exactly 500 pages, 498 pages. You can just plug in some of these details to get a sense of what your author royalty would be, meaning how much would you as the author make per book sold. For example, every single book of mine is different, and I get more or less depending on if it's paperback or hardcover or ebook, and you name it. But I would say my average royalty is $3. So if I was to say, okay, $700 character art cover divided by $3, what is the math for that? I had to pull out the calculator. 233, we'll just round up and say 234 book sales would need to be made before this pays for itself. What you could do, because again, everything's a business decision, so you can technically do whatever you want and make it your business decision, but you could say, I want to make at least half of my money back on release month. Okay, well in this case then that would be, divide by 2, 116 books. Okay, but what if it's for social media, something like this? Now, I didn't actually pay for this beautiful art. I just want to shout out Margarita Lapina. She made these for fun for the Stolen Kingdom and then the Ginny Key, and actually saved her website on the back, so I could always remember to give her a shout out and actually know where to send you guys for her. So that was just for fun. But then I did hire Ingrid to do this artwork for Ari, and I used it on bookmarks, which I'm trying to think if I use that as a pre-order incentive. I once again basically was like, how am I going to use that in an effective way to make my money back? So I've never done character art just for the heck of it. Now again, you could for fun, but if you're wanting to make your money back, then actually create a sort of business plan of, okay, I'm going to make merch, so how many, designs do I need to sell before I make my money back, and then that is my business plan goal and what I'm going to be shooting for and doing marketing for. And you can also use your past track record, I guess, if you have one, for other types of things you've sold, past books, you name it, to kind of get an idea. Like I said, with the Stolen Kingdom Collector's Edition, I was like, well, how many did I sell of that during release week? Okay, that's what I could reasonably expect to sell of this omnibus during release week, if that makes sense. Now, I know that's not an exact answer. It's more of a formula that you kind of have to plug in and create your own version, but I hope that helps. All right, next, the most common question: where do you find a character artist? I had people asking, where do you find commission artists specifically? Where can you find a good artist to do character art? I have 3 places that I personally know of. I'm sure there's more, so drop more ideas in the comments if you have other places that you found character art. But in my experience, I mainly was on Instagram. That was where I found the majority of artists. I also know that a lot of people find artists on DeviantArt, that website that I showed you. A lot of artists post there, and then other authors' books. So if you are looking at other authors who have character art, they often will credit their artist in the front of their book or in the acknowledgements, or both. And so you can kind of just browse, I don't know, at the bookstore or your own bookshelf and just be like, or even maybe online, and be like, okay, who did their art? Because I love it and I want to work with them. If you find somebody that you're like, this would be amazing. So for example, a really, really big artist right now is Charlie Bowater. And I totally did reach out to Charlie and be like, hey, you want to work with me? That would be awesome. Like, what are your prices? What is your availability? And I never even got an answer. So just keep that in mind. When you're searching for an artist, you're going to want to search for more than one. You're going to want to broaden your pool. It's kind of like when you're on submission, like if you're looking for an agent, actually, if you're on the publishing side, it's very similar to that, where you're kind of sending out a lot of different inquiries, being like, I don't know who's going to answer. I don't know who's going to have good pricing. I don't know who's going to be available. So you want to kind of ask a lot of different artists and get multiple people who might be a good fit for you. So that's where to find them. But then let's talk about hiring them, how to make sure it's a good fit, how to pick the right person, right? Because that's also an issue. Elijah asked, how do you know who to choose? And that's a valid question. Just sharing my experience, okay? I made a spreadsheet and I had a bunch of different sections. Obviously, I wanted to keep track of their contact information, I guess, their name or their Instagram handle, because I found a lot of people on Instagram by searching hashtags, if I didn't make that clear. Just kind of scrolling through beautiful book cover, beautiful character art, okay, that leads to this. Okay, on this artist page, they're using these hashtags. Click on that, scroll through those hashtags, find a different artist, click on them, scroll through the hashtags they're using, click on them, and just kind of browsing in that way and finding people that might be a good fit. And then plugging that into my spreadsheet as, here's their Instagram handle, or here's their DeviantArt website, or whatever the case may be. Next, I would plug in any information they freely had available. So a lot of them, if they're taking commissions or not, that would be the first one. If it's not open to commissions, I usually wouldn't even save that. I would just be like, okay, just don't get your hopes up because they're not free right now. Then I would plug in their website, and then I would browse that website and plug in their pricing information if they had a range. A lot of them will have ranges like, just the head is this much, but if you want the upper body, it's this much. If you want the whole, top half, it's this much. If you want a full body, it's this much. If you want multiple characters, more than one, it's this much. If you want a background setting, it's this much compared to if you just want a floating head. Just to give you an example, there's going to be a wide range, and it's going to depend on the different artists as well, what they decide to share up front and what you might have to reach out and ask them for. But I just collected as much information as I could prior to reaching out so that I could be like, okay, is this even a good fit? Is it even worth reaching out? So the pricing column, a column for availability, because if they're like, I'm open in 6 months, that's a little too far typically. I'm trying to think what else I was looking for. Just any notes. I even had a notes column that was just like, oh, I really like the way that they do lighting. I really like the way they use color. I really feel like this is solid young adult, and some of the other ones I was looking at were middle grade or a little too adult, so I feel like this one would be a good fit. Just notes to myself so that I could kind of gather a sense of who is my top artist, who's my second best, who's my third best. And then that's when I would start to reach out to them. To come back to the question of who to hire, it really does depend on who's going to get back to you, if they're professional about how they get back to you and in a timely manner, and if their prices and availability are reasonable and fit with what you need. So sometimes you might even have to do a second round of looking, because the first round of people just didn't really fit or didn't get back to you or whatever the case may be. So it's not easy and fast. I'm sorry if that's the answer you're hoping for, because I know it was what I was hoping for, but it took a long time. And that's okay. I did write myself one note here that if you are wanting to do book covers specifically, make sure you've chosen somebody who actually knows how to do book covers. And the reason I bring this up is that book covers are complicated. The artist is going to need to know how to do the sizing, how to make the art more on the right side where the cover is and where that would land, how to get a template possibly, how to know where the ISBN might go, knowing what a full wrap is, and all of these details. So if you're here watching this video, then I'm going to assume you're pretty new to it, which means you don't want your character artist to be new to it. I feel like at least one of the two people in the process should have some experience. And so further down the road, if you get comfortable with it and you're like, oh, I know what they need to know, I'll send them the template, I know where to get it, I'll let them know to watch out for, XYZ, then awesome. Then you could hire somebody who might be a little cheaper because they're way more newer to the process, and you can kind of guide them through what a book cover needs. But if they don't know things like, oh, the typography is actually going to go there, so you don't want to put details there, things like that, or how to create the right size for a book cover and suddenly it doesn't even fit and you paid all that money for nothing because you can't use it, it could get frustrating. Let's put it that way. All right, this next question is on how to work with a character artist. What is the commission process like? Okay, these are where the questions get intense. So I'm going to read them and try to make sure I hit everything, kind of jump around. AV asks, how does commissioning work exactly? Do you send pictures, photos, drawings of your concept and they send you a sample and you narrow it down? Do you have to pay every time changes are made, or do you get a grace period? And then how do you find a good artist in the first place, which we talked about. Okay, we're gonna break these questions down because there's actually more about inspo and more about how long it takes and more about drafts. So we're going to break it down into 3 sections. Big picture, how commission works, then the inspo side, what you send them, what they kind of typically want from you, and then the how long it takes and how many drafts kind of side. Okay, so how does commissioning work? Let's break that down. This next question has some good ones that will help me break it down. How do you communicate what you want for art and price? Very, very clearly. Multiple emails, always be professional, always be kind and respectful, but just if you don't know something, just say, hey, I'm pretty new to this. Can you clarify for me XYZ? Can you clarify for me how you approach commercial licensing to artwork? Do I get all of the rights, or do you keep some of them? Do we share, etc.? The more you communicate, the better. That's my first tip. And again, always politely and kind, but the more you do it, the better, because you don't want to get frustrated after the fact because you forgot to ask questions. So how many revisions do you typically do? If they don't already say, some of them already say. Do you charge if we go above and beyond that? How much would you charge if we go above and beyond? But coming back to Avi's question about like, do you have to pay every time you make changes, or is there a free grace period? A very, very common thing is for an artist to have a set number of drafts that are like built into the price. So they're going to typically, most artists will do some sort of sketch first. And I'm speaking very broadly because every single artist is different, just like how we all write books differently. Ask them, communicate up front, what's your process? How do you like to do this? And a lot of them will even say on their website. Typically they'll do a sketch, then they'll kind of make it better, run it by you again, and you can kind of give them some feedback like, this would be good, can you add this, can you add that? And with each pass through, hopefully it's getting better and better. What I will say is that they will often get frustrated with you if you try to scrap everything and go backwards. It should be moving forwards, and you should be communicating clear enough that it is able to move forward without too many glitches. Now, it's normal for there to be a little bit of difference in vision, and so you just help them and you try to communicate as best you can. Some of that might mean pausing before you email them back, because everybody hates multiple emails. Nobody wants to get an email and then 5 minutes later, sorry, I forgot to say this, and then 5 minutes later, I forgot to say that, I'm so sorry, also this. Gather your thoughts, even take a day to just look at it, see if anything else comes to you. Write it up as clearly as you can, maybe even revise it, run it by somebody, get feedback from friends, and then respond with one clear, concise, helpful email and be like, here's all the things that I would like to do. Can we implement those in a kind way? Again, kindness, because character artists are creatives just like us, and nobody likes their work to feel like it's being critiqued or being judged, if that makes sense. So for example, if I have a vision for like blue eyes instead of brown, I don't go, ew, those eyes are ugly, why would you do that? I would say, oh, by the way, let's update the eyes to blue because it's actually going to reflect my character better. That's leaning into the inspo. So let's come back to the kind of bigger picture, how to work with them. Do you pay up front, half now, half later, partial royalties? How would you split those royalties, et cetera, et cetera? No, typically you don't split royalties with a character artist. I would say the only instance would be if they're doing like, typically like a kid's book, you know, is what I'm picturing here, where you're like, okay, we're even on this. We're like co-authors almost, co-creators. And so in that case, they are keeping the rights, but typically you're paying for the rights up front. And if you're paying for just like social media artwork or something like that, or like the bookmark, then very often the artist will keep their rights as well. If you're paying for something like this, where you plan to sell it, then what you need is commercial rights. And again, it depends on how experienced the artist is. They typically will know this information, but if they're brand new, you might want to discuss it even more. But commercial artwork is anything you're selling. So almost everything that I have paid for has been commercial artwork, where I'm like, I do plan to sell this. And so I ask them up front, what is your commercial pricing? And when it came to this artist, I still feel new, you guys, and I still over communicated, and I asked like multiple times, hey, just to clarify, so when you say commercial pricing, you are saying that I will fully own the rights to this, right? And again, I did it in a nice way, but I was super, super clear, and I got it in writing. And you could even get a contract that says Bethany Atazadeh, you know, your name, owns the rights to this character art for XYZ purpose, for selling whatever. You could create a contract is what I'm trying to say. I'm not going to write the contract for you. Let's go over into the next kind of overlapping question, which is how do you work with them? How do you share inspo? Diana says, do they prefer doing their own thing with loose guidelines, or do they prefer to have a very solid image of what you're looking for? My guess is somewhere in between. And then coming back to Avi's question, do you send pictures or photos or drawings of your concept? Writing It Right said, where do you find inspiration for character art? And how do you know like the position that you want your character to be? And did you have to know that prior to getting the service? Ivana, I think I'm saying that right, said, would a commission artist be able to take a rough sketch for inspo? And then J Mike MC said, do you provide the artist with like text or snippets of description or full chapters to help them? Really, really good questions. This is the upside of working with a very, very experienced character artist, because they know what to ask. And I think I already shared this in my last video, but this is the form that I filled out. It was a Google form from my character artist. There were so many good questions, but I think my favorite one was sending a Pinterest board with inspiration. So if your character artist that you're working with doesn't ask for something like that, I still think it could be worth sending, or just asking them, hey, could I send you? Same goes for that question about, can you send a rough sketch? Yeah, if you want to, ask them, be like, hey, can I send you a rough sketch? I would also say, yeah, if you want to send little snippets of the writing, like your actual description written out, that could really help make sure that your character of like this ethnicity and this hair color and eye color doesn't accidentally get all the wrong features. You know what I mean? Because they don't know your vision. And so I think the best advice that I heard was artists would rather have freedom, but most of the time the author has a vision in their head, and an artist is going to get way more frustrated if they do something cool but you're like, that doesn't line up with my vision. They just want to know what your vision is before you get started, so that they have less revisions that they have to do. Because if you are way over here and they start at this end, it's going to take forever to get to the middle meeting point, versus if you start them in the right place, they start there and it's just a little bit to line up. You know what I mean? It's so much easier if you share as much of your vision as you have. If you want to give them freedom after that, my understanding is that most artists absolutely love it, but only if it means that you are also going to love it, not if they have to do a lot of revisions. The only thing I'd say no to is providing the like full chapters. I have offered, I think I probably have always offered like, hey, I'm happy to give you the book if you want it, but I never would expect them to actually read it, because typically they don't know who you are. In a lot of instances, this is a total stranger. They don't have any reason to read an entire book or even an entire chapter. That's asking them to do work above and beyond what you're paying them for. And it's awkward. It's a little bit weird. So I would just say like 1 or 2 lines about their description, 1 or 2 lines about your vision, 1 or 2 lines about your like the placement that you're picturing, and it is up to you. So if you need some help, you know, coming up with inspiration, again, Pinterest is a great place. If you're doing a book cover, other book covers, looking up what other authors have done in that genre to get inspiration, it's I hope that helps. All right, next is pricing. So author Joanna White said, pricing and finding a good artist on a budget. Bluebell said, how much was it? And was there anything you changed about the art in the process? So yes, the art changed as we went. I think we talked about that. But coming back to the pricing, my book cover by an experienced artist for commercial usage was $700, just under, like a couple dollars under. $700. I found some that were less, like $500. I found a lot that were more. I found some that were $1,000, some that were like $2,000. There was even one artist that was like $4,000. Again, coming back to the ROI question in the beginning, can you make your money back on something like that? It's a lot harder. It's going to take 4 times as many book sales to do a 4,000 versus 1,000. This is one of the reasons that I think it's good to do your research and have multiple artists that you're talking to, because then you can see what the range actually is and see if somebody's like way out there or if they're maybe way too cheap and you're like, why is that? Does that mean that you're new to this? That could be okay. If you're like, I'm comfortable working with somebody who has less experience to answer the budget question, that could be a good way to get a lower price, because when an artist is starting out, they're going to charge far less than when they have a lot of experience and they're going to charge more. Same goes for commercial art, things that you're selling, versus social media art and things that are just for fun. I want to give you a more specific dollar amount, but I feel like not only is pricing changing constantly, but it also really depends on the artist. It depends on their experience. It depends on what they're comfortable asking. And it depends, of course, on if you're getting the full cover wrap or just like an ebook cover, like what size you need. Again, how many characters are on it? Is it full body? Is it just the head and anything in between? Do you have any sidekicks? Do they have any decorative elements? Do you want to add something in the background behind them, like a castle? All of these things will cost different amounts of money, and every single character artist will price them differently. So shop around would be my advice. To give you a range though of book covers, I've heard as low as, so I'm gonna say closer to $200 or $300 is probably your low end for a cover. And then, well, obviously it shoots high up, but like 1,000 would probably be my personal max, and I would not go above that. I feel like I would need to be a really, really big name author who makes like 10,000 sales on release month before I would do something riskier than $1,000. That's just me personally. Coming back to Elijah's question, how long does it take? And then author S.J. Palmer said, are there a certain number of drafts that you get? Oh, sorry. And then this also says, how particular do artists let you get? So the questions are kind of overlapping at this point. I'm all over the place. Unfortunately, you're probably expecting this. It depends on the artist. I would say though, an average time frame that I've heard and seen in my experience tends to be a rough month. It could be faster or it could be longer, but very rarely does this depend on the artist. It actually typically will depend on you. How many drafts do you need? It's gonna take longer. Did you communicate your vision really well up front? It might be really fast. It might be like, yes, you nailed it. The only time I can really see it being the character artist is if they're just like a generally slow person. And that's something you can watch out for when you're hiring them. How fast do they get back to you in emails? Does it take them a week to answer an email? Imagine the character art will probably take even longer than that. And then how many drafts was the other question. And once again, I am so sorry, it does depend on the artist. Some will say as many as you want. Some of them have gotten burned by saying that, and they will have a limit. Maybe it's 3, maybe it's 5 drafts, maybe it's 10 drafts. Maybe they say within reason. Because once again, most of us are not going to take advantage of them. We're going to be really careful. We're going to think through our answers, think through what we want, try to communicate that well. But some people will just be like, can you try this? Oh, can you try that? No, I hate it. Can you try this instead? No, try this. Oh, no, try that. And at some point, can you imagine how frustrating that would be? It would be the worst. And I'm sure a lot of the more talented character artists in particular have gotten burned by offering unlimited amounts of revisions. So that's one of the things you can ask when you first reach out is, hey, just wanted to know so that I can be prepared ahead of time. How many revisions do you typically allow? Or see if their website says it. All right, Miss Shembre, I hope I'm saying that right, is a commission artist who commented on this post. And so I want to share this comment answering some awesome questions. How commissions work, how you send the inspiration. There's some other cool, helpful stuff here, like how you can request, 1 to 4 concept sketches to like pick from and then flesh them out from there. How to find an artist by Googling book cover artist and then the genre you're going to publish in. Some stuff about DeviantArt and AI, which I'll bring this back up at the end. But I really appreciate appreciated another comment from the same YouTuber. And so for this next section about just like book cover needs specifically, I want to read this to you because this is really, really helpful. As a commissioned artist, some people should be made aware that the size of your cover needs to be communicated to the artist. And glossy versus matte should also be considered by the author, especially if the cover has a lot of dark/shadows. Blacks on glossy may turn out too dark and you lose details, while black on matte will look less rich and less deep, a little bit more gray. Not necessarily a bad thing, just a design choice. With digital art, your computer screen is backlit. So when you print those books, they're obviously not going to have that extra light coming in behind them, behind the artwork. So that needs to be considered and adjusted for. For book cover design specifically, you're going to want to let them know if it's a print book, what size it's going to be. If it's an ebook, it's usually just like an 8x5. But for print books, there's a lot of things you need to consider. So if you're doing a front cover on a print book, it's still going to matter if it's I've been calling it 8x5, but I should say 5x8 or a 6x9 or something else. It really, really matters. And then on top of that, if you're doing the full cover wrap, so that means not just the front, but also the spine, the back cover, you're most likely going to want your character artist to do artwork that spans the entire thing. And if you're doing a hardcover, maybe even spanning the dust jacket flaps, for example. All of these things can actually be found pretty easily by downloading a template from the print-on-demand company that you plan to use. So with this book, I was printing on Ingram Spark, but I also use Barnes & Noble Press, and I also use Kindle Direct Publishing. All of these companies have different templates that you basically will fill in what you expect for the book size, in this case 6x9, 498 pages, cream color pages, etc. And then they will give you a template with the full cover wrap. Now, even with my character artist, who was experienced, I would say, and has done, I think, covers before. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I still was the one who had to go and get the cover template and give that to my character artist because I was the one who knew how many pages it was, my exact book size. Say it was like 6.5 by 8.25 or something like that. Like, you are the only one who's going to know for sure all the answers to get that template typically. So you are going to want to be the one to go get that and then send that template to your character artist. Neil's Library asks, did you have to pay extra to be able to use it on your own product? And we kind of talked about that. Yes, commercial pricing is more expensive, but it allows you to have the full rights. Is the artist allowed to reuse and sell the art for their own purposes? For example, selling it as a print in their shop? What rights do each of you hold over the work? And then author Jennifer Kriegbaum, I hope I'm saying that right, said pretty much the same question of what was the process when discussing the rights to the art, using it in merch, selling it, etc. Do you have full rights over the image, or does the artist retain their rights as well? I want to give you like a cut and dry answer, but I hate to say this, it almost is going to depend on the artist again. This one is a little bit more defined, or at least it should be, because like I've been talking about, there is such a thing as commercial pricing, or commercial rights, sorry, where the pricing will go up as you specifically pay for the rights to sell your work commercially. I'm just hesitant to speak for all artists everywhere because I've only worked with a set few number of artists, but in my experience, these are two very separate categories. It's either you both have the rights and you're just paying to use their artwork, but they can put it on their stuff and they keep the rights. That's kind of your typical commissioned work. And then there's commercial rights, where you pay extra to own that artwork and only you get that artwork. They are not using it. It doesn't belong to them. They give you the rights. And it should be pretty separate, but I feel like I have seen artists who overlap and they give you the commercial rights, but they still use it. But I'm not sure if that's because the author said, yeah, go ahead and post it. Yeah, go ahead and use it. I want the word to get out. I don't know behind the scenes how that's working. And so when you're talking to your character artist to get the pricing and get the rights, again, communicate. Ask them questions. Be like, hey, I just want to clarify, just so that I don't misstep, so that I understand, however you want to say it. Ask them how the rights work, because every single artist might approach that differently. Oh my gosh. We have one question left for AI, but my little guy just woke up from his nap. And I don't feel like I have the authority to talk about this too much. I can share my opinion and then I kind of want to open it up to you guys. So let me read the questions about AI. Leon says, did you use anything AI related to help create your art/book? Do you have any thoughts on it? Asking because I think I'm going to use BookBrush, Atticus, and AI art for my first ebook. Chick Rock Guitar says, how to navigate the minefield that is AI, as in best ways to find an artist that creates from scratch. Oh my gosh, these are such good questions. Oh, I can hear him yelling. So I'm just going to try to be really succinct. I did not use anything AI when it comes to the cover creation itself. This is completely a human artist, and I believe personally in supporting human artists and keeping human artists in book covers and all artwork, honestly. Even just like throwing away my own opinion on AI, I know for a fact that a lot of readers are completely against it and not okay with it. And so if you use AI as an author, you can be shooting yourself in the foot. That's without me even putting my personal opinion into it. It's just me watching what's going on and seeing how people are mad about AI in artwork. And for good reason, honestly, because the AI that's making this artwork is using other real art without permission. And I think that is going to cause issues in the future. I don't know how. I have no idea how it's all going to pan out, but I would just be very careful. In fact, let me just even go further and share something I heard at a conference once. In the future, because things are so unclear and we don't really have laws around it yet, in the future, potentially, say you sell 1,000 copies of your book that has AI art on the cover, and then so they pass a law, for example, that says the original artists need to get paid for that artwork. You might have to give all your money, your hard-earned money from that book that you wrote to someone else because you used artwork that wasn't technically yours, because AI technically isn't ours. Another legal thing that I've seen come up, that I've seen authors talking about, is if it's not legally ours because AI made it, you're not paying for it, it's like copyright free, but maybe not in the future, maybe not. But then technically anybody else could use your cover too, right? That's not good. So coming back to it, did I use anything AI? No. And am I going to in the future? Absolutely not. I don't want to hurt my book. I don't want to hurt other artists. I don't want to hurt readers. I feel like all around, there's way more negatives to using it for something you're going to sell. If you're creating it just for fun, like something on social media, I just want to share for fun, something where you're not making any money off of it, you just want to be excited and give your readers a visual of your character, for example, I'm not sure at that point, because you're not making any money off of it. It's kind of like sharing something you find on Pinterest. I don't know if that's allowed either, but people do it. It's such a gray area. I'd love to know your thoughts. I'd love to hear in the comments what you guys think about this. But coming back to how to navigate the minefield that is AI and find an artist who creates from scratch, this is so tough. Even a year ago, I was not really asking this question compared to right now. I would absolutely be asking this question because it's changed so much in just one single year. I can't imagine where we're going to be a few years from now. This whole video might become obsolete. I don't know. I have had people tell me you can Google things that make, how did they say it? Things that let you know art is AI. You can Google, and I remember finding lists of things, like you can find little glitches. Like if you have a character and their hands like by their side, they might have 6 fingers. There might be just something off with the head is like too big or too crooked or something. It looks kind of Picassoed. Little things like that, but it can be really hard to tell. So I think that's, again, just going to end with the one final tip that I think spans this entire video is I think you should communicate with your artist and try to have that open line of communication between each other to talk about it in a kind, polite, professional way. I need to go get him from his nap, but I really hope this helped you. I really hope you'll check out my book. It's going to get an exclusive Kickstarter print run with foiling on the cover, tons of extra goodies inside that are Kickstarter exclusives. So I hope you'll check it out. I'll leave the link below. After this Kickstarter ends, this will eventually go on pre-order as like a regular print run, and I'll link that below as well. I hope you'll check out this book if you're interested, and I hope you enjoyed this video all about character art. I'll talk to you again soon.
Then all